All right, 11 minutes past 8. We're back live in studio on this Monday morning. Do keep your comments coming into us, and we'll bring them to our panel. Louise, Galvin and Paul Rouse alongside me here in studio this morning as we get stuck into what's happening on the back pages this morning. Going to kick things off with the Irish Examiner for you. An excellent photograph here. I saw Tony Lean on Twitter last night deciding which photograph he was going to go with, and this one's an absolute beauty that kind of sums things up. It's Rory Best with towel in face there, all black now. The fallout, 7-page special on stagnant Ireland's World Cup nightmare, just to sort of flagellate ourselves with on a Monday morning. If we weren't depressed enough, there's plenty of coverage of it this morning, and some other bits and bobs inside as well, including plenty of reflections on the weekend's Gaelic Games club action. But that's the Examiner. Louise, you've got the Irish Times first. Yeah, the Irish Times again leading with the game. Good team signs off with another bad performance from Jerry Thornley is the main headline here. Again, probably a fair reflection that, you know, we obviously within this tenure, because we're going to look back within Joe Schmidt's tenure and Rory Best, who's on the front page. It is, you know, it was a good team, but I guess we ended poorly. So that's what they've gone with. Paul, what do you got first?
On the back here, board stiff. Jurgen Klopp is about Man United against Liverpool yesterday, where Man United looked for a long time as if they were going to win the game, but got caught right at the end by an Adam Lallana goal and a very irritating celebration afterwards, for Man United fans at least. A bit about...
What did he do? I was watching.
He just was preening himself.
He was. Listen, that's fair enough.
Yeah, no, he's had a long 18 months without a goal, and it's really interesting. Klopp at the end talking about how United went defensive, and it's the only way they can play against us, which is, I think, a misreading of the game.
Well, they did it eventually, and it was the worst thing they possibly could have done.
When they played up the field, they were really competitive, and Liverpool did not look good yesterday.
You're not a fan?
Yeah, you can. I'm a sympathizer.
Right.
I can honestly say when United, when I was in my teens and all that, I really was interested. I've lost interest. Like over the decades, I've lost interest year after year.
But it doesn't fully leave you, as well.
It never leaves you. No, I'm saying, and I definitely want them to win. I'm not trying to hide from that. And it is a little bit sickening. It's like being back in the 1980s to see Liverpool in the ascendant again. I can't hide from that. But I can't say it. I can't say I care. Yeah, fair enough. Anything else in the Murray? Was that it? Yeah, Andy Murray back. And winning a match yesterday, which is an incredible achievement in a really demanding sport physically. Conor Callaghan winning another final, this time hurling, and he is a superb hurler, as everyone knows. And a teaser about the GAA, about the GAA Club Championship reports, which are inside, and the decisions in Congress about the two-tier championship. Yeah, Con got a lovely goal yesterday, and then nearly had his leg taken off. I don't know if anybody saw that yesterday. Yeah, it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild. It was like an absolutely outrageous tackle that in any sport, the aggressor gets 4 or 6 more weeks of a ban. It was an outrageous tackle, I have to say, but he's a superstar in all codes, it turns out. He is, and I would imagine, I think it's a mentality thing as well. I think he could play any sport, and he would be outstanding at it. He just has that. He's that ruthless gene about him, doesn't he? He does, yeah. It's here's a target, I'm going for it. Yeah. And I may not get there straight away, but I'm going to get there. Yeah. The Irish Independent, it's rugby really all the way here. This was as damaging to the next man as it was to the man that he's replacing, writes Rory O'Connor, on why the heat is immediately on Andy Farrell after Ireland's collective meltdown in Joe Schmidt's final act. And Rory is pretty ruthless with his Ireland player ratings inside as well. There's ones for Keith Earls, Johnny Sexton, Conor Murray, Ian Henderson and Joe Schmidt. He's not sparing with the sword here, Rory O'Connor, and there's none of them that get above... apart from the lads that come off the bench, get above 4, which is a high mark for Gary Ringrose and Peter O'Mahony, and that's it. So he's pretty ruthless there. And just in terms of the piece, he's collective failure taints all involved, he writes. Joe Schmidt and his side climbed Everest a year early and ripped off the oxygen mask before wandering off a cliff, which was a pretty good way, I think, of summarising where we've been at over the last little while. Schmegs it, as he calls it, which he's put a bit of thought into that one, is upon us, and for all that he may get a standing ovation and a soft interview on the Late Late Show when he returns. The man who delivered so many big moments will go down in history as just another Irish coach whose team failed to perform when it mattered most. No, that's too much. You're not having that? No, it's too much. Joe Schmidt has done an unbelievably good job with Ireland, and his record is absolutely exceptional. You take the World Cup, quarterfinals, fair enough. I think against Argentina they were missing a third of a team, and the third of the team you wouldn't want to have been missing. So this is not to excuse it, you're looking for an explanation, and that's what the explanation is for that one. And they came up, it's true that they didn't play well against the All Blacks, and it is true that they were demolished, but the All Blacks were unbelievable on Saturday. And when you have an unbelievably skillful team at the peak of their powers, then when things start going wrong, and there's nobody who's ever played sport at any level who hasn't seen when things start go wrong, how things go wrong. And to dismiss out of hand a record like that, I think is too much.
I completely see where you're coming from. He has been the most successful Irish coach that we've had. He's brought us to new heights. We've obviously beaten the All Blacks twice, once at home. I mean, we all know, we've been told to death what he's done. But I think the man himself has said he wants to be judged on this final tournament, and based on that, if he wants to judge himself on that, it's a failure. But overall, I do hope that when people look back and when the dust settles, when he looks back and when Rory Best look back, they will look back in their total career and the total contribution that they've made to Irish rugby, and then that won't be a failure. Yeah. But in the co-lighted day today, he wants to be judged on a World Cup. And I know what you're saying about the All Blacks as well and how brilliant they were, but we handed them opportunities which you can't do. Agreed. So much of the game was a lack of our execution. Now, if we were coming up today and said we executed X, Y and Z, we executed the game plan and we still lost, or we lost well, then at least there's a bit more of a debate about, all right, we need to change. What we learned from 2015 is we need squad depth, and he did to a point try and build that. He tried to a point, tried to have 3 options at each position, but the game plan didn't change at all, and we didn't ever seem to have a plan B, plan A, when it didn't work, when we lost that level of execution, which was a really high demand of how we played that possession game. Well, we really looked, almost like a tier 1, almost on a tier 2 level nation, and that's the really sad thing about it. So I agree that overall it's not a failure, but based on this World Cup, which is what he wants to be judged on.
So I agree with that. So I agree with that. Well, the point I'm making though is perspective, that it's too much to dismiss it with those words, with those just like that. I think we also, Johnny Sexton coming out last week saying it was the most important game of his life. You had all of these guys really ramped it up, and Joe Schmidt, obviously you're saying that he wanted to be judged on that because he's trying to push people on. You're trying to push it on. You're trying to make it the big target and drive people to new heights. And the team obviously did plateau in 2018, but it's very difficult. You can pick around the margins here and you say, okay, maybe Larmour should have played instead of Rob Kearney or so on. Pick 3 or 4 different positions where he could have possibly played different players. But would it have made such a massive difference to the collective when a team plateaus? It plateaus.
It was moving deck chairs on the Titanic.
When there are much better team, when there are much better players, not obviously there to come in. So it's all very well saying Rory Best is 37. He was over the hill. Well, who's going to play instead of him? And so on.
Do you know, I think losing to the All Blacks is actually, history is going to be too kind to Ireland in that regard, because they will say, oh, well, we're beaten by the All Blacks, who every chance is going to go ahead and win the thing now. For me, the All Blacks were their usual excellent selves on Saturday. They were fine. I don't know, was it Billy Keane writing this morning said they were sensational? I mean, you know far more about this than I do. I didn't think they were sensational. I thought they were their usual excellent selves. They didn't need to be anything else. And there was no other team in that last 8 that we would have beaten. And like you said, there was probably more than a few teams outside it that probably would have beaten us on Saturday.
On that day, yeah. They were very clinical. Anything we gave them, they absolutely, like 1 phase, 2 phases, they were under the post, and they did not let up. We know, because we saw it to the final whistle. I think if we got into it, what we needed to make that a bit of a dogfight, a bit of a 1-score, 2-score game, we were never going to come back from probably even a 2-try deficit. So in essence, I think everyone knew the writing was on the wall near the end of that first half, which was just even so deflating.
It's tough to look at, yeah. Leo O'Brien on YouTube says Joe Schmidt brought Ireland success, lots of success when comparing Ireland's rugby history. Give the guy a break. Joe Schmidt isn't the reason we lost to the ABs. That's kind of the nub of the issue, whether he is or he isn't, and I'm sure that a conversation isn't going to end here this morning. Right, was that?
The next one is Guardian Sports. So another kind of big rugby reference, looking at Wales and France, and I don't know if people watching that game, but you know, very often you can't really point to one instant in a game of 80 minutes that really dictates the result, but here you can. Fahimina gets sent off for an absolutely ridiculously stupid elbow in the 48th minute when his team were attacking 5 metres out on a maul, and it completely alters the game. Wales were not good. They were very lucky. Gatland even said in his interview after the game that they were lucky to be into the semi-final. France actually played decently well. They actually showed a bit of consistency. They managed the game much better than Wales did.
Even after the sending off, they were pretty
Absolutely. You know, they tried to manage it, but essentially they had a try 5 minutes out after Wales butchered another opportunity, and you know, 8v7, bit of pressure, failed to exit correctly, and then a great
forward rip. I thought that
Thomas Williams. Yeah, well, it was a brilliant rip. I thought it was a little bit forward as well, but look, you have to go with what the decision was, and Wales eventually break the deadlock in the 73rd minute. But even if all he did was sat in that scrum for 5 minutes out, it was so ridiculously stupid, and we're not looking for scapegoats here on you know, in terms of Irish rugby, but if you're in France, this man is a massive scapegoat and he's a lot to answer for.
Did you think, watching that match after that happened, and I know France played cleverly, kicked the ball long, did you get a sense the whole way through that second half that Wales were going to win after that happened? That it was that basically France just didn't now have enough.
I felt like no one was going to win it, someone was going to lose it. Yeah. You know, it was one of those games, because Wales were just butchering opportunities, and they obviously, it was a game plan that they did not want to kick the ball into touch, but they were just kicking it back to Medar, who was playing quite well. Penno at times had great flashes. Huge was actually quite good defensively. And Vakatawa. So I think Wales at times, their game plan was keeping France in the game, and then when they were getting opportunities, they weren't being clinical with them, and then just the one-man overlap 30 minutes, it just told.
They do. France do the opposite to us. They disappear for 4 years and then turn up at a World Cup, and like by rights should have been in the semi-finals. We literally beat the world beaters in that cycle, and then we're just not there at the end of it. What else have you got for us there, Pop?
Just again, it's the back of the Daily Mail, and it's Philip Lanigan. They're teasing Philip Lanigan's piece inside where he assesses the big decisions that were made at Special Congress in the GAA at the weekend. Rory Keane writes about another abject World Cup exit under scrutiny, and then a picture from Im McKillie winning the Cork Hurling Championship on the back.
Okay, the Irish Daily Star, Snorri, Man United. Jurgen Klopp is a bit of a dig, as Paul was mentioning earlier on, at Manchester United after that 1-1 draw yesterday. Josh, we need to push on. Not quite sure what that means. It's Michael Scully there after the rugby. Mara fumes after Con KO. That was the pretty rough challenge we mentioned in the Dublin hurling yesterday. And I didn't realise that Leo was such a big Club GAA man. I presume it's his constituency, is it? It's
Bridget's. St. Bridget's is in his constituency.
John Costello, so he's a season ticket holder, I'd say, is he?
Well, he wouldn't be the first politician, I suppose, to see votes in matches.
No, the last. Louise.
Fun anyway. The Sun there again. Neil Curtis talking about Liverpool. Jurgen's drop. Klopp rages at yet another VAR storm, and then Paul Keane as well talking about that King Kong leg injury, which unfortunately in a day of it was the 15 county finals that were on, that has obviously dominated when it sounded like there was a lot of draws.
Loads of draws.
There was, you know,
Paraffin nearly done by
Guidor as well, I think drew up in Donegal. That basically there's a lot of was it Scottstown were beaten or didn't get
Clippers, trained by John McEntee, and with Conor McManus scoring 5 or 6 points. They were going for 5 in a row.
Yeah.
So that's a huge turnaround.
So it'd be nicer maybe if
I know.
You know, one of those were on the back page.
The media.
Yeah, I'm learning.
What have you got?
I haven't read this paper in a long time. The Racing Post, and it's Stars and Stripes. Arsenal could be frustrated by steely hosts. It's all about. It's not it's a classic back page where they report nothing, and what they're doing is they're pitching forward to what's coming, and it's all about gambling.
Right.
So it's about how what are the chances of Liverpool winning the championship after drawing at Old Trafford, and Liverpool were 8-11 on before yesterday, and now they're 5-6
right.
for the title. So they've slightly edged. They're still odds-on favourites, but they've slightly edged in the betting. But it's a reminder again of how much of a hold gambling has on sport.
Yeah, all right. The last one for me is the London Times. We have planned to beat best team in sport. I mean, I'm shocked to hear Eddie Jones being so aggressive in his preview of this one. He hailed New Zealand as the greatest sports team of all time on the one hand, and then it says England will have a plan to beat them. So that's Alex Lowe, who's on duty there in Oita ahead of the World Cup semi-finals at the weekend, and also a good picture there of the Wales-France quarter-final. Wales scrape into the last four after French thriller.